us coffee, tea, and rum. One day the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. At a fair in the sun of town, her hair was blonde and this was brown. She made a whaler man come around.
Well, it's kind of a misty, overcast day on Crooked Creek after about a month of just blistering heat and nothing but calm days. There's finally some wind predicted today. So I thought it'd be a good time to get out in this 15-foot skiff. For you new viewers to the channel, you may not have seen my 15-foot skiff. This was the boat that kind of started it all with the channel. In fact, I think my first video was the build video for this, and if you happen to go back and watch that, just realize my production, camera work, and narration is, well, let's just say it's come a long way since then. But looking forward to just doing a little bit of casual sailing today and having some fun. Headed out the mouth of Crooked Creek and probably going to check out some little shoals and islands along the creek channel. Just kind of slow sailed across the creek channel till I ended up here on what I call Crooked Creek Shoal. Always a nice, peaceful place to hang out. It's still pretty early in the morning and the forecast is calling for the wind to pick up around noon and peak around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I guess I'm kind of hanging out waiting for the wind. In the meantime, I think I'll say a little something about the 15-foot skiff, show you some details. I really haven't talked about it in much detail. She is the biggest boat that I've built, kind of the most serious, and sort of my go-to sailboat as far as my home builds. And she doesn't carry a ton of sail. She's not what you'd call fast, definitely not a racer, but she's more of a sailboat than any of my other boats. Has a retractable centerboard and roughly about a 54 square foot lug main that I sewed with help from my mom. Actually, my mom sewed it with some help from me from an old sailrite kit, and I forget what dinghy that sail was intended to go with, but we sewed that from a kit. And the mizzen sail is just an old jib from a little O'Day Sprite dinghy, which is just kind of a 10-foot yacht tender style of dinghy. It's basically rigged like a leg of mutton, the mizzen is, and some viewers have referred to it as a Bermudan mizzen, which I guess is right. Kind of unusual, but it works. And I actually have a a jib sail that I use sometimes. That was kind of an add-on that came a couple years after I built the boat. So I actually have a big bowsprit that I run when I want to use the jib, and I don't use it all the time just because it really complicates things having 3 sails when you're sailing single-handed. But it's definitely a noticeable increase in power and ability to point into the wind, or ability to sail closer to the eye of the wind. She rows pretty good, especially for her substantial weight. She's all solid wood planked with a 3/8 marine ply bottom. She's a hefty boat and has to be trailer launched. Therefore, this is not one that I would carry in a truck bed. Definitely not. She's not as easy to row as, say, my smaller 12-foot skiff, but she's not bad for her weight. And the nice thing about it is the weight allows her to carry that momentum a little better. So once you get your speed up, she just wants to coast, which is really nice. And also when you're rowing into the wind and waves don't slow you down quite as much. She'll tend to carry that momentum. So probably the greatest difference in construction compared to my other boats is that each side of the boat is planked with 2 boards. So 4 boards making up the side planks overall. In order to gain a lot of height, I ended up using a pair of 1x10x16s per side on this skiff. So she is very high-sided, which makes her able to handle quite a bit rougher water. This is much more of an open water boat for getting out here near the main river channels than my little boats are. You'll see me do it sometimes in the 12-foot solo P-row or the 12-foot skiff, but I have to be much more mindful of conditions when I do that, because those boats are so low-sided, and traditional open design boats, they can get swamped easy, so you have to be careful. Really, I would not recommend those boats for open water at all. They're for small protected waters. But the 15 can handle it, and she's been in some pretty rough conditions. I've gotten a lot of requests for plans for the 15-foot skiff, and you know, I really have had no intention of making them, but I've gotten so many requests, maybe I need to reconsider it. So I'm not saying yes I will or no I won't at this point, but I will say it's a possibility at some point. It's just that I have other designs that I want to get to before I would think about making plans for this 15. For example, the 12-foot skiff, and I already have some work done on that, but it's going to be a little while longer, and I know a lot of people are waiting for that 12-foot skiff as well. Well, still no wind to speak of. Let's take a little stroll around the shoal. So this shoal is part of a network of little shoals and islands that just run along this ridge on the western side of the Cumberland River channel. So this is the lower Cumberland, Lake Barkley. I always refer to it as a river, as the Cumberland, because it is part of the river. That's the origin of this water is the Cumberland River, and historically it's always been the Cumberland, but locally people would generally refer to this as Lake Barkley. So over here to my right, that is the main Cumberland River channel out there. So you've got that riverbed below the lake, the deepest water, and that's where barges and power boats generally want to run, especially barges, not necessarily smaller power boats, but the big cabin cruisers and the barges. They want to stay out there in the channel. Well, to my left over here, there is a creek channel that is on a lot of charts and is actually partially marked with navigation buoys. Kentucky Lake is much deeper, and there's not as much sunken timber and hazards and flats as there is over here on the lower Cumberland. This is a pretty treacherous bit of water, especially if you don't understand that just because you see all this water out here, that does not mean you can run your boat anywhere you see water. A lot of this, like where I'm walking right now, is just a foot deep or a few inches deep. And those shallows extend all the way over to this shore of LBL to the west there, except for that creek channel right there. What is this? An oyster shell? Actually, it's not an oyster shell. I heard some kids playing at the beach not that long ago when I was riding the skim who had grabbed one of these and they were going, "It's an oyster!" These are actually mussels. And they used to be very valuable when commercial mussel fishing was legal, but as far as I understand, it is now made illegal because the mussels became endangered, at least in this part of the river. Speaking of thin water, I think I've just discovered a skimboarding spot here. I should have brought my board. And that reminds me, don't forget to check out my summer side project, the Skid Files playlist. It's kind of a mini series about my journey with skimboarding that I just recently took up this summer, kind of harkening back to my skateboarding days as a teenager. Each episode is kind of an adventure. There's a lot of getting out here along the riverbank searching for spots. So some episodes are about the hunt for the spots, and then of course there's a lot of action, a lot of skimboarding footage, and you can kind of see how my skills have developed over time, over the summer. I've gotten a lot better than when I first started, and I also have some DIY skimboard builds, of course, in that playlist. I built some plywood skimboards that are just about the easiest thing you could imagine. The easiest DIY project almost. You just cut out the shape from plywood and you got to put a little bit of a curve in it. Then I also went on in episode 3 to build a board that was a hybrid construction with a plywood bottom, and I actually used foam insulation, styrofoam, to give the board a little more float. And you'll have to check that one out. I don't want to give anything away, but it could be something. It could be something worthwhile. So I'm out here on the point, far northern point of Crooked Creek Shoal here, looking at the Pelican Islands, and you can see behind me the full extent of the shoal looking to the south. I could probably continue wading and walk no telling how far in this direction. This is just all shallow all along this ridge, and it's going to continue getting more shallow as TVA engineers allow the water to recede from summer pool down to winter pool. There's about a 5-foot difference between the two. Well, at this rate, I think this has just turned into a yapping, chit-chatting sort of a video. And if the wind doesn't hurry up and get here, I may have to make this a separate video from the sailing one. I would never get away with that though. People want to see that sailing footage. We'll see what the wind does. I'm feeling a little bit. Still not much. I don't think it's the wind I'm waiting for. It's not a ton of wind, but enough to mess about. When you're slow chugging, you can sit on the stern sheets here. It's kind of nice. Get a good view of the boat and the water and the scenery. Little puff, just a little puff out near the point here. Well, I have set the old lunch hook. I'm sitting here on anchor, about to see what I got in the lunch box. I mean, I know what I've got in the lunch box, but you don't know. So you're about to see what I've got in the lunch box. What do we have in the old lunch box? Oh, actually I forgot about this. Bacon on ice, leftover bacon, and not necessarily the finest Braunschweiger. In fact, pretty low grade, but at least it's Braunschweiger. I am really disappointed that Aldi has discontinued the Deutsche Küche Braunschweiger. That was good stuff. It's a tragedy, really. Scooting right along now. Uh-oh. May have got in a lee. No! Out of wind.